Happy Friday night, everyone. You can tell how exciting my night is. Here I am doing work. But it's wonderful to wrap up the week with you, with thinking of you, thinking of the class. And you all are just amazing and terrific. It was a real pleasure to read your discussion post this week and your wonderful discussion threads and responses to each other, as well as sit in on a bit of chat in each of the rooms last night, and then to read your chat reflections. As noted, I am posting the 3 documents so you can look at them. I think it really is valuable for you to read other groups because each group really does bring something different to the discussion of basically the same questions. And some of you elaborated more extensively on some questions. Some of you just skipped questions because you ran out of time or you chose to, and that was fine. And so again, I think that if you're able to read, these short chat summaries, I think they'll be really meaningful to you. So I'm posting those. We began our discussion last night talking a little bit about Neuberger because we had, in the discussion forums had gone through the 4 levels pretty extensively. And one of the things that I love about beginning the course in this way, or now we're in the 2nd week, is that we're focusing on parent development. As I think somebody pointed out last night early in chat, so much of when we look at parenting and the way that parenting is taught is look very much at the parent's behavior, the parent's knowledge that turns into parent's behavior, interactions with the child, and then we see the child outcome. And we kind of forget that human being who is parenting is an adult, is a human who has their own life experiences and their own life experiences that very much inform their parenting actions, their experiences that inform their parenting knowledge, their cultural context, their age and maturity, and we kind of just skip right to the action related to the child. And so these discussions about parents' levels of cognitive awareness about their parenting, and then in turn our discussion of the first couple chapters from the Siegel and Hartzell book that really allow us to think about the parents' experiences and reflecting on those experiences, the parents' experiences as they may have had an impact on the parent's own brain, and then what that means to the parents' actions. And that's critically important. And I implore all of you, whether you're going to be parenting educators or are parenting educators or other parenting professionals, to not only keep that in mind, because I know you will, but advocate for that, and really push your colleagues to be fascinated about this parent's development and to look at the many, many, many facets of who this individual is, who is a parent. We'll talk about it in this class, but one of the models that I use a lot in my work and a lot in my teaching is Jay Belsky's multiple determinants of parenting. And in that, he looks at parenting and, of course, the impacts on child outcomes, but he looks at 3 key dimensions that inform parenting. One, obviously, being the child. And not every child is the same. And children vary, of course, by birth order, by gender, or by gender orientation, by health status, by temperament, right? So a parent is going to parent different children differently. But also the parent and the parent's own personality and the developmental history of that parent has a great deal to do with how they parent and how that parent's developmental history interact with this unique child. And so, with Neuberger, we look at that interaction in terms of does a parent then respond in a way that is very egoistic? Does a parent respond in a way that is very conventional? And look at that child in terms of the way that I should be raising that child, or the child should be, right? Do I look at that child as an individual, or do I have a more analytic approach where I understand myself and my own development, and this child is a unique individual, and I'm looking at our interaction as a unique experience? Anyway, so I really appreciate our beginning the course and the Siegel and Hartzell book, and and these and other parenting scholars that really keep very rooted. The parent is a unique individual in the picture, and then as scholars, as educators, as professionals, we also look at that context, the historical context, the biological context, the current context, the social context, all of these contexts too that have an influence on that parent, on that individual. So this week again, this is what we were focusing on primarily in the Siegel and Hartzell book, beginning to think about sort of reflection and the opportunity for the parent to have a more reflective approach to understanding the impact of prior experience on their parenting, and to really understand what potential actions, say by the child, may trigger something in the parent and in a way that they may respond to the child appropriately or inappropriately. But the important thing is that the parent become aware and can then reflect and understand what were those conditions, that trauma, that might have influenced their response. I'm also going to share with you a short video clip from Dan Siegel. I mentioned this in one of the groups. Dan is an incredible educator. You can see from his writing in the book, but he does a great deal of teaching about the brain and about brain development and about the brain development related to parenting. And the clip that I'm going to share with you really talks about implicit memories being triggered and the possible roots of disorganized attachment. I know we haven't talked about attachment yet in this class, but I think you'll get the point from our discussion this week if you look at Dan's short video. Some of you in your chat reflections, I particularly enjoyed and appreciated you sharing your own experiences with each other and how your prior experiences have you've observed in your own parenting, or maybe even if you're not a parent, how experiences with children around you may have triggered something in you, and you've reflected on that and you've come to an understanding of maybe where that memory was. You also talked in your groups about mindsight and the ability to understand the perspectives of others, and which becomes critically important for a parent to gain empathy and gain an understanding that possibly, the child too is reacting in a way that they don't or they aren't. And when you've discussed the film clip of Akilah and the Bee, one of the groups, and I loved your reflection of this, was that the mother was able to first understand that her response to her daughter's choice was somewhat triggered her own sense of shame or lack of accomplishment, and a recognition that her daughter is not on her same path. Her daughter is unique and is different, and that rather than allowing her past, the mother's past, to so predominantly stand in her way, she could reflect on that, get beyond it, and be present and available and assist her daughter. Again, I really encourage you to read each other's chat reflections, your discussions of what you went through. And it really seems as though the chapters in the Siegel and Hartzell book were very meaningful to you. For some of you, it was some of the discussion was similar to what you knew before, read before. But for all of us, I think the opportunity to be encouraged to consider past experiences and our own reflection on our past is only beneficial to our current growth and our current, not only interactions with our children, if we have children, our interactions with our students, with other people, and come to a deeper understanding simply of ourselves. And again, coming full circle the benefit of doing that when we're looking at parents is it gives us a greater understanding and appreciation of the individual who is the parent, and as an adult, and that they too are cognitively, socially, physically developing, and all of those factors that affect that individual are undoubtedly then going to affect their choices, their reactions as a parent. The last thing that I'll just mention, and this gets a bit about the film clip, Akeelah and the Bee. I don't remember if I mentioned this last week, but one of the groups talked about narrative stories as a way to process experience. And if you think about it, if you watch a film, you watch a television episode, you watch a television series, what you are seeing is narrative. You are seeing characters and plot, and in a narrative fashion, telling a story. And from watching our film clips last week, and then watching Akeelah and the Bee this week, and then through the course we'll have other clips that we'll look at. I'd like you to just step back and think about what is the power and the value of watching film that offers us these kinds of narratives that we can use to help process experience, either process our own experience, to understand the experiences of others, to use, say, as a teaching tool for others. It's important that we think about this now. If you look at the movie analysis assignment, one of the things, one of the features really asks that question, and so I'd like early on for you to begin to think about this, about the power of media, the power of these film clips to tell narrative stories, to offer us characters, and what that might mean as a teaching tool. So that's it. We are just at 12 minutes. So you don't need to hear from me any longer than that. Again, it was wonderful to reflect on your chat discussions and be part of them a little bit this week. And thank you for being so incredibly supportive of each other. And I'll have a little bit of a write-up about next week. Next week we're going to start talking and reading a little bit about culture. And as we think about a parent's own developmental history, certainly, and their social context, certainly the culture that they are from and the culture that has informed who they are will also greatly inform their parenting choices, whether they follow the culture or they are being intentional to not follow culture. So culture will be part of what we explore next week. And with that, I will wish you a very good evening, good Friday night, and I will see you online.